and I'll begin. Hello, my name's Dane Hubert. I'm a high schooler who's here for a prison tour. As I told the guard on the other end of the loudspeaker the reason I was there, the automatic chain link gate ominously creaked open, and I walked into the 8th largest penitentiary in Alaska, the Lemon Creek Correctional Center. The interior of the prison looked like I would have imagined. A complexity of concrete walls, with gleaming linoleum floors and unforgiving metal bars separating every corridor and cell. The part that astonished me, though, was the calm and respectful nature of the inmates and the friendly demeanor of the guards. Almost every prisoner we passed in the halls smiled or even said hello to the warden and myself. It was difficult to imagine that these people had done anything wrong. And even harder to imagine that, according to the Alaskan average, 61% of them would be arrested again within only 6 months of their release. This is what is called a recidivism rate, the rate at which people who are released from prison tend to return. During my tour, I met Alaska Director of Prisons, Zane Niswonger. He told me that during his entire career, he has met thousands of prisoners, yet he believes that only a handful of them are truly evil. They have made mistakes, but the vast majority are still good people, with the potential to be good neighbors and members of communities. It should be the job of the prison system to help these people realize this potential, but in the vast majority of cases, they do not. This is why the United States needs to undergo major changes in the way we incarcerate people and what happens to them when they're in prison. My name is Dane Hubert, and this is Beyond the Bars, the problem of recidivism in American prisons. First, I'll be going over the American prison system and its flaws. Second, I will go over a foreign prison system and how the United States should amplify it. And third, I will go over why avoiding prison sentences altogether can often result in better outcomes. In the United States, 82 out of every 100 people that are released from prison will be arrested again within only 10 years. The U.S. Department of Justice states that the mission of prisons is to, quote, foster a humane and secure environment and ensure public safety by preparing individuals for successful reentry into our communities, end quote. But with only 18 out of every 100 released individuals successfully reentering their communities, our prisons are abjectly failing at this mission. This has to do with how, in practice, U.S. prisons tend to focus too much on punishment and too little on rehabilitation. Many of our prisons lack essential educational and work training programs and fail to provide addiction treatment. In the U.S. Bureau of Justice Statistics 2016 survey of prison inmates, only 17% of prisoners reported current participation in any kind of educational program, which is especially alarming because inmates who receive education in prison are almost half as likely to reoffend. Moreover, addiction and substance abuse represent one of the most common problems among inmates in the United States that many of our prisons fail to provide adequate addiction recovery services. In North Carolina, for example, in 2021 to 2022, almost 9,000 inmates with addiction problems were admitted into their state prison system, but they're only capable of treating 3,000 annually, according to their website. In 2019, only 10% of prisoners across the United States with substance abuse disorders reported receiving clinical treatment while in prison. Not only do American prisons often fail to provide resources to inmates, many exploit prisoners too, often through a network of prisons that are actually private businesses. 27 states currently incarcerate people in private, for-profit prisons. For-profit prisons make money based on how many people they are incarcerating, making it profitable for them to imprison as many people as possible, with little concern to whether they will be successful upon release. Having prisons and prison officials be incentivized by making money often leads to corruption as well. One atrocious example was the Kids for Cash scandal, in which 2 Pennsylvania judges accepted nearly $2.6 million in bribes and kickbacks in exchange for unnecessarily incarcerating hundreds of youth in juvenile detention centers. The sad truth of the matter is that many of our prisons and prison officials are operating in order to make money, with little concern for the lives of the thousands of people they are exploiting. And many other prisons are failing to provide adequate resources to inmates. In order to solicit a massive decrease in the amount of crime in the United States, we need to have a massive change in our prison system. Norway's prison system embodies a sharp contrast to the American one. Walking across the grounds of Halden Prison in Norway, a visitor would be more likely to feel like they're strolling through a trendy college campus than a maximum security prison. The walls are covered with murals, trees line walkways inside the compounds, and the interiors of the cells resemble quaint studio apartments, rather than structures designed to confine robbers, rapists, drug traffickers, and murderers. Inmates could be seen preparing meals together in communal kitchens, working in an auto garage or carpentry shop toward certifications they can use in the outside world, or even advancing personal hobbies, such as graphic design and music. Norway's prison system hasn't always looked like this, however. In 1999, Norway was afflicted with one of the worst incarceration rates in the world. Their legislators made the momentous decision to completely transform their prison system to focus on the recovery and transformation of individual offenders into productive members of society. Their prisons lost any trace of the traditional punitive nature of correctional centers, instead focusing on the rehabilitation and eventual release of individual offenders. Prisoners can receive trade certifications or high school and university degrees while in prison, can access an extensive library, and even have their own gym, complete with a rock climbing wall. These sorts of amenities seem radical compared to the bleak disciplinary prisons in the United States, but they are effective. Just 2 years after the reforms were instated, Norwegian recidivism rates fell to just 20%, among the lowest in the world. The director of Halden Prison, Ari Koidal, states that, quote, "In Norway, the punishment is just to take away someone's liberty. The other rights stay. Prisoners can vote, can have access to school, to healthcare. They have the same rights as any other Norwegian citizen, because inmates are human beings. They have done wrong. They must be punished. But they are still human beings," end quote. Truthfully, there would be a lot of barriers to implementing a system like this in the United States. It would be expensive at first and culturally unprecedented. But it would be an investment, both financially and in the safety of our country as a whole. If the United States saw even half of the success that Norway did when implementing such a system, we would see our incarcerated population decrease by several 100,000 people over a period of 10 to 20 years. This might seem completely speculative, but certain prison systems in the United States have already tried implementing changes like these. For example, the Oregon Department of Corrections recently began experimenting with a more Norwegian-style approach to incarceration, flying in Norwegian prison guards to train their officer staff, and implementing other reforms, such as decreasing the use of solitary confinement. The results were auspicious. The incidence of violence and the need for disciplinary action decreased rapidly after the changes were made. In a 5-year period after the reforms were instated, the rate of violent altercations among individuals who had interacted with the newly trained guards decreased by 74%. These successes show that the rehabilitative nature of Norwegian prisons is something that would work in the United States as well. Our prison system needs to be changed, but so is the criteria for which we incarcerate people. In the United States, according to the Brennan Center for Justice, almost 40% of the people in our prison system were incarcerated without having been prior threats to public safety. The same center went on to estimate that if we were to be more selective with who we incarcerated, we could decrease our prison population by up to 500,000 people, which would leave more room and money to incarcerate people who do need to be in prison. If we could instead assign these people probation, alcoholism treatment, addiction recovery programs, or community service, they would receive the same benefits that the rehabilitative programs in our prisons have, without being severed from ties to their communities, family, and employment. Over the course of researching for this speech, I interviewed the Commissioner of the Alaska Department of Corrections, Jen Winkleman. When I asked her about her opinion on alternatives to prison sentences, she said that, quote, "I absolutely support it. I think that there is a definite time and place. You have to have the right offender," end quote. She went on to state that once people get into the prison system, it's difficult for them to get out. This outlook is supported by research. One analysis of 116 studies found that assigning any kind of prison sentence at all actually increases the risk for offending after release. Prison sentences cut off people's community ties, while at the same time exposing them to criminal influence from within the prison. If we can avoid them, we will reform people while keeping them from losing their community bonds. We tend to view our prisons as final destinations, but 95% of the people incarcerated in the United States are going to be released at some point. The way that we manage them while they are in prison will determine if they will be safe members of society after their release. But the way that we are managing them now is evidently not making people into safe members of society. The United States is addicted to punishing those who have made mistakes, but this is counterproductive to their success and to the safety of our country as a whole. By shifting our focus to rehabilitation through education, substance abuse recovery, work training, and overall preparation for life in the outside world, we will make our correctional system into what its name implies, a system that allows individuals to correct their mistakes. Quoting the director of Holden Prison in Norway, "We are releasing your neighbor. If we treat people like animals in prison, then we will release animals onto our streets." Thank you.